I'm sorry. I know. I know that was probably really lame, but it's Halloween, so I had to get y'all. Happy Halloween, y'all. It's your boy Steph, back with another video, and this time we got Let's Read six true scary Halloween stories from Reddit. Um, of course, it's for the holiday. And I don't think I've ever heard any Halloween horror stories, so this will probably be the first time, at least reacting wise, I have. And it caught my eye because it's got Lock, Shock, and Barrel from The Nightmare Before Christmas on there. And then their song, Kidnap the Sandy Claus, just popped up into my head, and it's been going on and shit, so, yo, I got my candy. It's supposed to be for the kids. It's got Skittles, Starburst, bubblegum, lollipops, Jolly Ranchers, all that good stuff in here. I've been eating that a little bit. It's a big ass bag, so I only had like 5 little packets of Skittles, so I'm trying to stay away from that. But it's Halloween. Shit, I'm gonna cheat on my diet a little bit. But without further ado, let's get into this video.
This happened the night before Halloween, back in 2010. At that time, I was a freshman in college, living on campus. That year, the 31st fell on a Monday, so students' festivities went on the Sunday before.
Right.
During the afternoon around 7, I was outside playing soccer on a field near my place, and I noticed an SUV driving by several times. I only noticed this vehicle because we kicked the ball over the fence several times, and that car was present at least twice when we were climbing the fence to get the ball. I didn't think much of it, and proceeded to go to a party later that night.
Don't start bullshitting.
My girlfriend, a few friends, and I left at around 9:30 p.m., and we noticed a helicopter in the sky with a bright floodlight attached to it, seemingly scanning the area. We proceeded to the party and didn't fret over it. The party was on the other side of campus, and so we missed all the sirens and flashing lights racing up and down the street. We got back from the party at around 11 p.m., and I immediately noticed that not only was the first helicopter still in the air around my on-campus apartment, there was a steady stream of police cars, ambulances, and fire trucks driving up and down the street nearby. However, none of them had their lights nor sirens on, so I wasn't alarmed. The next day, the internet informed me that an SUV was found ablaze in the parking lot with a woman's body inside. This happened about a half a mile to 3/4 of a mile from where I lived.
Damn.
I guess during the party, the area was crawling with police and other authorities trying to look for clues. My roommate later told me that there was non-stop sirens for a good 20 minutes after I left for the party. In the next few weeks, more info surfaced, saying that a man killed his wife and tried to burn her body. He broke her neck, as well as bludgeoning her body. If the news article I read is to be trusted, the killer was lighting his wife's body on fire during the same time I was getting dressed up in my Woody costume for a party. It wasn't until a few weeks later that I made the connection with the SUV I saw while playing soccer earlier in the day. I find it very chilling that while I was playing soccer, someone was driving within 20 yards of me with a corpse in the car, especially since it was on the campus of a seemingly secure university in a very safe city.
Goes to show you,
This incident happened to me last year on Halloween.
crime can happen anywhere.
My little brother and I were home alone, since our parents had gone out to a Halloween party.
Don't matter how
They
quiet.
had tasked us with handing out candy to the trick-or-treaters. This bummed my brother and I out, because we made plans to go trick-or-treating with a few friends. Our parents told us that we were too old to still be trick-or-treating, and that we could instead invite our friends over to the house and hang out there. My friends declined my invitation to come over, because they still wanted to go trick-or-treating themselves. So that left me home alone with my brother, handing out candy. A lot of people stopped by our house, and by 10 o'clock, almost all the candy was gone. My brother and I decided that we'd just eat the rest. We were sitting on the couch, watching a scary movie, stuffing ourselves with candy, when there was a knock at the door. I stormed off the couch, wondering who the hell would be knocking on our door this late.
Don't open
I
it.
assumed it was just some late-night trick-or-treaters.
Don't open it.
Even if that was the case, I had turned the porch light and Halloween decorations off, which should have been a dead giveaway that we were out of candy
So
or that
don't
we
open
weren't
the
home.
door.
So I assumed it was my parents. Being cautious, I looked through the people
Thank you.
and saw a suspicious man standing on our front porch. He was wearing a black hoodie with the hood over his head, which made it difficult to see his face.
That's the point.
The only detail of his face I could spot was that he had a beard and dry, crusty lips.
Oh, no.
There was no way that this guy was a trick-or-treater,
Hell no.
because he wasn't wearing a costume and was far too old to be trick-or-treating alone.
Don't open that door, bro.
His hands were stuffed in the front pocket of his hoodie,
If you open
and he
that
also
door,
looked very thin.
you bullshitting.
Every single red flag went off in my head about this guy.
Good.
There was no way in hell I was going to open that door.
Thank you.
Still looking through the people, I watched as he knocked on the door again. He seemed desperate for us to open the door, and was shaking a bit.
Don't even let him know
It
y'all
wasn't
there.
cold outside. Definitely not cold enough for someone to be trembling.
Don't say nothing to him.
He was giving me a bad vibe, and I wanted to get rid of him as soon as possible.
Call the police.
We're out of candy,
Oh, my
I
God.
shouted to him.
You shouldn't have said nothing.
I watched as a smile spread across his face. It wasn't a friendly smile either. Are you alone in there?
Oh, no. What?
The man asked, almost in a mocking voice.
Don't answer that
His
question.
voice was raspy and dry. Should I call the police?
Yes.
My little brother asked me quietly,
Should have been did
gripping
that.
his cell phone. The man let out a low grumble and said, "Sounds like you're not alone in there." I continued to watch him through the people. His hands were still wedged tightly in his pockets, and he was still shaking a bit. I began to wonder if he was armed. I decided to take action and spoke to him in the most intimidating voice I could. "Get the fuck away from my house or I'll call the police,"
Oh,
I shouted. His smile faded, and he bared his teeth. His teeth were piss yellow, and I concluded that he was probably some homeless crackhead. He had a look of fury plastered on his face.
that pissed him off.
Fortunately, he left without trying to break in, probably because he knew I wasn't fucking around with him. I didn't stop watching him through the people until I saw him completely off our property. My brother and I breathed a sigh of relief and decided not to call the police.
Bullshit.
My brother and I were a bit paranoid after this and watched TV until our parents came home. We didn't tell them about the man,
Oh.
since he hadn't really tried to harm us.
That don't matter.
Now, when I think back to this, I wish we had called the police,
Yeah,
because maybe we would have been able to prevent a murder.
exactly.
You see, the next day we found out that the elderly woman who lived a few houses down from us had been brutally murdered. Her neighbor found her lying on her front porch, covered in blood. She had been stabbed multiple times in the chest and neck. My brother and I immediately knew who had done it, and we told the police what we knew. They couldn't do much from the information we had given them, since we hadn't seen many details of his face. They went on the hunt for the man, but never caught him. I blame myself for that poor old lady's murder,
Yes.
because I could have prevented it from happening just by calling the police.
Yeah.
I think the most disturbing thing of all is the fact that he didn't take anything from the old lady's house. Her house had been left untouched, but he could have gone in and taken what he wanted since her door was wide open. This means that he just wanted to kill. That was his only intention.
Yep.
He didn't want money or jewelry. He only had the urge to murder.
Is that gonna happen after every
My
video?
dad was the coolest guy on the block. Probably because he was one of 3 black dads who lived in our town. The population is around 98% Caucasian, and that's not an exaggeration.
I wouldn't feel
He
comfortable.
was a state police officer, intimidating, wore Oakleys before the hipsters, and he was generally a rough-sounding person. Damn, do I miss him.
State trooper.
But the one thing he feared the most was Halloween. He would tell my sister and I stories at night about his life when he was in high school in a slum in New Jersey, and that every Halloween, crazy things would happen. He may have been pulling our legs a bit, but we didn't care. When Halloween would roll around, he would take us out while my mom stayed home to trick-or-treat. One night in 5th grade, Lexi and I were dressed as a witch and 50s poodle skirt girl.
What?
Dad held our hands, walking to the last street when I realized I'd lost Mom's scarf she'd let me borrow. Now she loved that thing, so we walked all the way back towards this darker corner of our street. It's by the woods and a small stream, but when it's dark you can't see anything. Dad said he'd seen something and walked towards it. When he got there, he started slowing down. He was staring at something in the dark that we couldn't see. Lexi called out to him if he found Mom's scarf. He told her to be quiet and started crouching down, looking in the distance. For several moments we stood there, waiting. I could make out the scarf above his head, tied to a branch. He grabbed the scarf, still staring in the dark, and started backing away. Then my dad screamed and sort of shuffled backwards. It was a low, throaty scream like he was furious. He was swearing too, but I don't remember what. Whatever Dad had been staring at then bolted out of the trees and ran down the street, opposite of where we lived. It was a little child, probably a boy from his silhouette shape, in a black costume with skeleton bones on the front and a skull mask. When Lexi and I tried to go over and see what had happened, Dad yelled for us to stay back. He got onto his ancient cell phone and called Mom to come pick us up. His next call was to the local police. We left before we could see anything, but the next day Mom told us about the dead, skinned animals that had been found.
Oh my God.
By the time us kids could go back, they taped off the place and taken out the bloody animals, but there were stains on the pavement and the smell was really bad. The kids talked about it a little in school, and I was curious if they ever caught the boy. Nothing came out in the local papers though, and it was quickly forgotten. Eventually, I know my dad could have told us more, but it was the last Halloween we'd ever spend together.
Trick or treat.
One of my roommates, some friends, and myself left to go to a party around dusk, and were suddenly catcalled by a group of 3 drifters or homeless people. We thought nothing of it and went on our merry way.
Keep your eyes on them.
About 4 hours later, we were going back to our apartment to change shoes. High heels and messed up streets are hell when you've been drinking.
What?
When one of the drifters calls out to me, "Hey, beautiful, how about a kiss?"
What?
Me being a little drunk and sassy, I reply, "No thanks. Girls are more my type."
Ooh.
To my shock and horror, he says, "Hey, my friend here likes the ladies." A homeless girl comes out of nowhere and proceeds to kiss me
What?
on the mouth.
Oh my God.
My friend picks me up and throws me over his shoulder. I proceed to flip the fuck out in my apartment,
That's a good friend.
shrug it off, and we venture back out.
He just saved you.
Well, I got separated from my group in the crowd, and then I see the 3 drifters again. I try not to show that I'm shitting bricks when they ask me where they can find a liquor store. I point down the street to the Kroger, and they say, "Okay, you can show us." I'm a small woman,
I'm good.
and they shove me into their vehicle. I think, naively at the time, that they will literally let me out at the grocery store,
What?
except it's closed because it's after midnight.
You clowning.
I plead for them to let me out of the car, but they keep saying, "The power does what it wants," and headed away from the safety
What
of
the
the
fuck is
campus
he
area
talking about?
onto the freeway and out of the state.
He on what?
For the next few hours, I visited 3 states with them while pleading for my life. I'll never forget how they kept saying, "The power does what it wants,"
You brought this on yourself.
and talking about how they were going to have fun with me. I kind of resigned myself to the fact that I was going to die, and I would never graduate college
Not
or
necessarily
see my
die,
family
but
again.
you'll want to.
They pulled into a gas station, and I slipped out of the vehicle to be grabbed again. But I screamed my head off for the clerk to help. That's when they talked about taking me to the cliff.
Oh.
I mentioned that my family is full of police officers, and that they're probably already looking for me.
That ain't gonna
And how
help
they're
you here.
committing a federal crime, and that I won't press charges if they take me back to the campus. I guess that's when the girl started feeling sorry for me, because she started to say, "Guys, she's really scared. Maybe we should just drop her off somewhere. This doesn't have to get worse." They took me back to the campus area, and as soon as the girl pulled me out of the car, a police officer called my name. The girl shoved me toward the cop and yelled, "The power does what it wants, and tonight, it let you live." I've never been so happy to sit in a cruiser. They pursued them, but I don't know if they ever were caught.
I don't know how they could be.
My roommate dropped out of college and joined the military, and I transferred to another school. So ladies and gentlemen, please be careful walking at night. Always keep your cell phone with you if possible, and call the police if you see suspicious people near your apartment.
You were playing the whole time.
I had a brush with death that day, and I am so grateful for the time I have now.
You were playing the whole time. You deserve that shit.
Halloween has, unfortunately,
I'm glad you're okay though.
never been a big deal out here in Scotland, and that's always bummed me out because I love Halloween. But after this year, I think I'll be happy never to celebrate it again. My street and the next street over have a lot of young kids who go out trick-or-treating. So while I was out shopping all day with my mom, we decided to pick up some sweets in case anyone came to our door. I had plans to go to the cinema to see Ouija with my boyfriend. So when I got home, I was getting myself ready to go out, and my mom was busy putting the shopping away. So when the first load of kids came to the door, I was the one who had to answer it. There were children from our street, the next one over, and some I couldn't recognize, as well as an adult at the end of the path. I guessed either a father or an older brother by their size, and they were dressed in all black and had some sort of mask covering their faces.
Keep your eyes
but it
on
wasn't
them.
anything I recognized from a movie or anything.
Keep your eyes on them.
Anyway, they all told me their jokes, and I gave them their treats, and they made their way back down the path and onto the next house.
Eyes on them.
I was about to close the door when I noticed that the guy with the kids was still standing at the end of my path. He hadn't noticed,
Eyes
and he wasn't
on
watching the children
them.
either.
At
He was looking right
all
at me,
times.
and my skin started to crawl when I realized that he was just there, staring at me.
Keep your eyes on them.
I backed slowly into my house and watched him as he raised his hand and waved very slow at me.
No.
And I was about to call out to him when my mom came to the door to make sure I was all right.
Gone somewhere with that bullshit.
And he took off in the opposite way from the children. He hadn't been with them at all, and he left as soon as he realized I wasn't home alone. I was completely freaked out
Pedophile.
and told my boyfriend all about it when he came to the house to pick me up,
Or rapist.
but I quickly forgot all about it while we were watching the movie.
I ain't forgetting shit.
I finally got home when it was getting really late, and trick-or-treating was well and truly over around here. When I got inside, my mom was just getting ready to take the dogs out for a walk so that they could do their last-minute business, and they would meet my dad on his way home from work, so I was going to be home alone. Now, after my horrible experience earlier, I don't really like the idea of being home alone,
Hell no.
and it was only made worse on Halloween, and it always has been. Anyway, I was home alone and I grabbed some snacks and went to my bedroom and onto my computer so that I could do some of my writing, scroll through Tumblr, and listen to music. After my first creepy encounter with the guys coming into my house and into my backyard, my dad bought a motion-censored light and attached it to the wall of our house right outside my window.
Yep.
Normally it will go off whenever a cat walks along our fence, but it will usually go off after a couple of minutes. I always know when the light has come on because it lights up my whole room, given where it's placed, and while I was sitting at my computer, the light came on. I ignored it at first because I knew it would soon go off.
Don't ignore it.
But 5 minutes passed and it still hadn't gone off. So I opened my blinds to have a look outside and see what was going on. My stomach almost fell out of my ass when I looked out and saw the creep from hours before sitting on the fence, waving at my window to keep the light on.
What the fuck?
His waving slowed down suddenly when he spotted me, and it was all seriously creepy again, and I didn't know what to do.
Call the
I
police.
just got flashbacks from before.
Call the police.
Luckily, I heard the front door open and my parents coming into my house with the dogs, so I rushed down the stairs and started screaming at them about the guy on the fence. My dad didn't question me. He just took the dogs and rushed through the house, through the back door opening, and ran outside, and then I heard him shouting,
Get them dogs.
"Get the fuck out of here, you creep! I'm going to call the police!" Dad scared him off, but I convinced him not to call the police
Why
because I
not?
didn't want to relive the whole thing again.
Oh my god.
I just wanted to go to sleep and forget about the whole night completely.
You was bullshitting.
Oh.
Halloween is my favorite holiday. Is, not was. Despite the events that unfolded one crisp Hallows Eve when I was about 16. At the time, I lived with my parents, younger brother, older stepbrother, and cousin, in a big but old house that sat in a cul-de-sac close
Sorry
to
for that
Main
cutout.
Street. Behind it ran an alleyway flanked by
Fucking
apartments,
ads.
and it had a huge yard that my basement bedroom looked out on. We lived in a small town. Crime seemed minimal in that area, and I'd made my way out that Halloween night to make the most of the best day of the year.
Right.
It wasn't just what happened that night, though. It was, of course, what came after, and one small incident that came before. A few days before Halloween, my stepbrother and cousin arrived home to discover a pickup truck full of dudes taking photos of our house.
What?
Weird.
Call the police.
But when approached, the men seemed friendly and complimented our Halloween setup. It was pretty great,
Keep
that
your
is
eyes
true.
on them. Don't fall for that.
The men sped off without incident and were quickly forgotten. My stepbrother and cousin re-entered the story Halloween night, the big event itself, at about 3 a.m. Both had been out drinking with their friends, and as such, both had left their respective vehicles and braved the icy walk home on their own.
Bullshitting.
Cousin arrived home first, but couldn't seem to get his key in the lock, so just sat on the porch bench and waited for my stepbrother to show up. He did about half an hour later. After having a bit of a laugh at my cousin for being an uncoordinated goober, he went to unlock the door himself and no luck. So they bit the bullet and called my mom, waking her up and let them in. She, of course, unimpressed to be opening the door for a pair of drunk idiots at this time of night, and didn't buy their story about the wonky lock. They insisted, though, and to shut them up, she finally relented and tried her key. She, too, could not get her key in the lock. Annoyed, tired, and now just confused, she wrote it off as a problem for tomorrow, and the three of them hit their respective hay. One other person arrived home late that night, me. Though I arrived much earlier than these two, and was in bed by about midnight, I woke up close to 1 a.m. Still tired, all I could feel was anxiety, and I didn't know why. At first I tried to tell myself that I'd just gotten a bit too into the holiday spirit, and psyched myself out. But then I noticed a shadow. It was perfectly man-shaped and cast upon my window. I turned on my bedside lamp, blinked, and it was gone. It wasn't unusual, mind you, to see the shadows of people harmlessly walking through the alley, and I told myself that's all there was to it. Then there was what happened after.
I can't have a bedroom on
I
the
came
floor,
home from
on the
school
basement,
the
on
next
the
day.
ground floor.
My parents were there, and so was a locksmith, and so were the police. My parents were there because, well, that's where they live. The locksmith was there because my mother had called him, as the confusion over the broken lock persisted. The cops were there because the locksmith and my parents had called them when the locksmith proceeded to pull the tip of a knife out of our lock. I was relieved to see that that's where the knife tip had ended up, though. as they discovered 2 of our window screens had been slashed. One on our garage, and one on my bedroom window.
Oh. Wow. See, I could never have a bedroom on the ground floor, on the bottom floor, first floor, whatever you want to call it. I could never have a bedroom where I can look out my window and there's the ground, the grass, or whatever, and people could just walk past, and if my blinds are open, they could just look in. Nah. Like where I stay now, it's on the second floor, so the living room, the kitchen, the second bathroom, the laundry room are all downstairs. I just can't be downstairs. I can't have a room downstairs. I don't know why. Yo, people need to learn when it's time to call the police. Fuck inconveniencing them. It's their job. They get paid to do it. They get paid pretty well to do it in a lot of spots. So, call the police, especially that story where Buddy just walked up to the door. You could have prevented that lady from getting murdered had you called the police. Made a report, or they would have searched the neighborhood. More than likely found him, because clearly he was in the area, since he murdered your neighbor only a few houses down, or a few whatever in the area, no less. She could have been saved, but you kids were bullshit. Parents need to teach their kids not to talk to strangers, because you shouldn't have said anything. You shouldn't even say you were home, unless like your blinds were open or some shit and he could look in. You shouldn't have said nothing. But people need to teach their kids to call the police. Because if the parents aren't home, older siblings aren't home, and there's just like 1 or 2 kids there at most, maybe 3, call the police. Teach your kids your address so they can call the police. Otherwise, if that man decided to come in, the parents weren't there, your kids would have got snatched up, and Lord knows what that man would have did to them. But obviously, since he murdered the neighbor, he just wanted to murder them. But since they're kids, he probably wanted to molest them. I don't know. People need to learn how to call the police. And in times like that, and some of these other stories, I'm not going to tell you I'm going to call the police. I'm just going to call them. If I decide to answer you, which usually I don't, but if I decide to answer you, I'm just going to be bullshitting with you while my accomplice, my partner, or other family member, or whatever the situation is, while they're calling the police. I'm not going to just come out and tell you. But I'm going to ask the cops to go code 1, which I believe is just lights. So it's either code 1 or code 2 that's just police lights. Don't use the siren and kill the lights when you get within a mile of my house. So he doesn't know or hear you coming. There's just a random police car or 2 that just flies up. And you can't even run because it's too late. So I'm going to upload this video. I'm going to have a second video, more than likely, before I go to work. And I may do a third video tonight after I get off work. But if I don't, I'll definitely have it uploaded in the morning. But more than likely, I'm going to do it tonight. So it's going to be 3 Halloween videos. At least 2 of them is going to be Halloween related. I might try to do just a normal horror story. Or maybe another deep web horror stories videos if I can find one. That is all I got for y'all this time around. If you like my reaction, like the video, comment on the video, and share the video. And if you really liked it, subscribe to my channel. Tap the bell icon so you will be notified every time your boy Steph drop new content, which I do on a weekly basis. I will leave links in the description to Let's Read's channel, along with the link to this original video so y'all can view it for yourselves. That is all I got for y'all this time around. Your boy Steph is out.